Hey everybody, it's Tracy Lamar Ray at the Glom Initiative's YouTube channel. Thank you for tuning in. We are moving deep into season 2, and I thought it might be interesting to begin to have some conversations and some dialogues with all sorts of different people with different experiences, businesses, individuals, entrepreneurs. And so I have a good friend of mine, Ramel, here, and we are just going to chat it up and see where things go. And we're going to start the conversation with recovery. So Ramel has a very interesting and unique recovery story. He was in a very serious and severe car accident a few years back, and his recovery, and I've had the good fortune to sort of observe and witness it, has been remarkable. So I wanted to bring him on and see, what we could say about recovery, and he can share his experience with you guys. So here we go. Let's talk about recovery. What do you think? Tell us about, I don't know where you want to start. If you want to tell us about what happened, or if you want to start from now and kind of move backwards, just let it sort of organically flow and tell us about your recovery. Let's talk about that.
Okay, so to answer the question, we'll go back. So March 11th, 2019, what is that, 3 years ago and some change? I had just come back with my business partner, best friend, from his 50th birthday. We celebrated in St. Martin. I actually had an epiphany during that trip where it's like, it's time to start smelling the roses, enjoying my life, so to speak, right? More than I had been prior my entire life up to there. I came home March 11th, the morning of, drove to work. I teach tennis, if you want to call that work. And so I was heading in for my first lesson. I was talking to my sister on the phone, like normal. I was a little off that morning, I will say, but either way, I ended up passing out behind the wheel. 10 seconds of my life, eyes were closed, went head on with another car, driver to driver, survived that.
And the other survivor?
Yes,
the other
she broke her arm. That was that. Driving a Nissan Armada, I was in a Honda Civic, lowered. But anyways, we're talking about recovery, so I guess it really all started from right there, right? The second that I opened my eyes and I took that first breath, I was like, I'm alive. And there's a lot of pieces in between, but that was like basically the journey from the bottom. But I wasn't even the bottom. I thought that was the bottom, and it got worse.
So let's give people some context of what your injuries entailed and what you had to recover from. Because of course they don't know who you are, and they don't know what happened.
So if you can see right here, I got a scar right above my like underneath the eyebrow, and life is all about scars. I mean, I'll come out with what do you call them, analogies all day. Life's about scars, So like I've got the scar here. I remember when they were carting me on the stretcher, and I was at Virginia Beach General, and I was looking up at the ceiling, and it was a reflection, and I saw blood just coming down my face, and I was thinking to myself, I was like, that's pretty freaking cool. So I mean, we talk about recovery, right? So again, we can go down so many roads here, but life is always happening to us, right? The question becomes, how do you handle it? How do you deal with it? Perspective, right? How do you, can you turn lemons into lemonade, right? Let's just go down the list. So initially I had a broken wrist. I teach tennis left-handed, so my left wrist was broken collarbone, broke all my ribs. No injuries to my lower extremities. I was blessed, knock on wood.
And
what do you mean?
However, but.
So I had, I bumped my head on the steering wheel, and so they were actually going to release me. That was a Monday. I had sushi that night. I felt good. I was like, I'm alive, I'm good. 3-4 days later, I basically went into a coma. So I went to a coma for about 2 weeks or so. Doctors didn't understand what was going on, like doing tests. I had 3 neurosurgeons working on me. One of them, excuse me, welcome to Virginia.
I know, right?
One of them went on vacation, gone for 9 days. The other 2 surgeons kept working on me. I progressively kept getting worse. they told my family, get ready for this guy to live assisted living. Basically, I was going to be a vegetable the rest of my life, right? And I was blessed. I had my brother, my family, they were there the entire time, and my brother was my largest advocate, taking notes, writing down everything, talking to doctors. And so Shannon, I can't remember her last name. Dr. Shannon, she came back 10 days later. My brother pulled her aside. He's like, hey, can you go look at my brother? I can't remember the dates. You know, it was all blurry. But she looked at my chart. She goes, he's getting worse every day. I'm going to go back in. This doesn't make any sense. And so I'm not going to name names, but she goes to her colleagues and says, hey, I'm going back in. And they say, good luck. So,
and so let me slow down. So when he says go back in, they mean go back into his brain.
Yes.
Because
something's going on. Like, I'm just getting worse. So she goes in, releases some pressure in my brain. I got scars all over my head. The scars are cool. And I wake up the next day, and I try pulling out the damn breathing tube out of my thing because like this doesn't feel good, right? So I literally had to start on the bottom. I had to learn to walk, eat, talk, adjust my, things that you take for granted. And once it's taken away, I had to learn how to adjust my eyes again. Yeah. Like it's crazy. Oh my gosh. Anyways. Yeah. And
so and I remember just seeing the video, and I am friends. We have mutual friends. So when all of this happened, the friends were devastated, and I could tell by the reactions and the behavior of the friends that it was really, really bad.
It was pretty serious.
That he was, he was on the brink, and they were super concerned that he was not going to come out of the coma, and that he was getting really, really, that they were at a point where there was nothing they could do. And then so you see him sitting here now. So I think it would be interesting to tell the people, how your recovery journey has been up to this point, how you're feeling, what the arc was like, and 3 years in, and of course, do you feel like you're fully recovered, or is there still recovery to be had, or where are you?
Good question.
Yeah.
I think really deep down, I think all of us are pieces of clay that we're trying to mold ourselves into whatever it is, our greatest form, our whole lives. I think that so yeah, I had the recovery from that, but I still had growth before then that I needed to, things that I needed to work on. When you get, and gosh, it's so cliche, but when you get things taken away from you, you take it all for granted. You know what I mean? So, in the most basic sense, when I was at the bottom, wherever you want to call that, I literally just every day when I woke up, my goal was to be better than I was yesterday. Mm-hmm. Plain and simple. And my father, he's taught me almost everything I know. I won't say everything because I've learned some on my own. But I remember in the hospital, he was saying, you just need to eat again. Because I had a feeding tube. I'll show you the scar here. I had a feeding tube. I had thresh. I couldn't even swallow food. But he goes, once you start eating again, everything will get better. So instead of focusing on all right, well, let's get to the finish line, what about that first step?
Baby steps. Yeah.
What about that first step? Because momentum is incredible, man. Momentum is so incredible. But most of us,
just to get moving and get the start going. So his tool and his nudge for you was just eat.
Just eat.
Just chew and
keep
swallow.
It so simple, man.
Basic,
and to me, I was almost part of me was like, damn, Dad, you kind of cold. That's cold-blooded. Where's the hug? And well, he's not really a hugger. But again, it's take that first step. And a lot of times we're just scared to try, man. It's anyway.
Okay. I think that landed with me, so I'm sure it's going to land with some of our viewers here. Okay.
I actually haven't shared that part. The part that, my dad's saying that, because you go to the physical therapist and all that other stuff, but my parents were there the entire time. My mom, God bless her, she was there freaking every day, man. And that all was part, the prayers, the well wishes, all that stuff matters, the energy,
the support.
Yeah, the support. It's all real, man. It's so real.
And so, so the first step to get you moving was eat. Just eat. Okay? And so give us some more examples of progress along that recovery road, because I think that people get stuck because, like you said, they're too busy looking for the finish, or too busy trying to reclaim what they thought they had before. and maybe miss some of the value in the lesson. And you alluded to it when you started to explain just that first step, that, hey, I had work to do before the accident, but maybe I wasn't aware of some of that stuff. So maybe speak on that a little bit.
Further expand on that, a lot of times I think most people are guilty of comparing themselves to other people.
Of course.
Or maybe they look at like, well, I used to look like this 5 years ago.
Yes.
Or like 2 years ago, maybe even 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Or like, I'm gonna do this in 2 weeks or when this happens, instead of like embracing the right now, like, right? So when we talk about comparison, I'm just comparing myself to me yesterday, period. That's it. Where was I yesterday? Where am I today? And then where am I going to be tomorrow, right? Like that. If you work in those veins like this, everything gets a lot smaller and simpler.
Yes.
Right?
You know, not overwhelmed. Exactly.
Dude,
so it feels doable.
Yes. Because if you're trying to take these huge bites of the apple, or you're trying to eat this elephant, right? You're trying to eat the whole thing instead of just taking a bite here and there, right? You're never going to do anything.
Yeah. So that incremental development, just step by step by step. But I think we're all guilty of, you know, the wanting to fast forward to the end. You know, we don't understand, and maybe we do psychologically understand that you got to go through to get through, but really on a deep fundamental level, it's like, no, you really have to go through it.
Gotta go through it.
There's no avoidance. So you go through one step at a time, you go through one bite at a time, you go through one, I don't know, what were you doing in physical therapy? One leg lift at a time?
I remember my very first, when I got transferred to Sheltering Arms in Richmond. Shout out to Sheltering Arms, the regional traumatic brain injury place. They've actually upgraded. They moved to they used to rent a floor from Centera. Now they got their own multi-million dollar, so, you know, they're amazing. Dr. Clanton saved my life. Anyways, I remember my first speech therapy. I go in, my brother was with me, and they put a pencil in my hand, and they said, you know, there was some boxes, maybe about this big, and they said, write in there. And so I wrote my niece's name in there, and my letters were this small, and they put she put a piece of ice on my mouth, and she goes, here, chew that, right? So she put it in my mouth. I couldn't chew. It just sat there and melted. Took 5 minutes. So we go back to my dad saying, hey, you got to eat. That's where it started, right?
Yeah.
So I remember that. And then, you know, you do cognitive tests to see your brain function. Yeah. So, I mean, I was literally, I have that piece of paper still when I wrote my Raina's name on there, man, you know? So, like, but again, it all starts one step.
And your ability, I think, part of the genius of what you went through was you had enough self-awareness to be able to understand that, I'm not even in a place where I can think about writing. Like, I need to think about swallowing, and I need to think about thinking. You know what I'm saying? Like metacognition, because the connections in your brain were literally damaged because because of the brain trauma. And you didn't have a mild brain trauma, you had a severe brain trauma. So that jar to the brain, your brain has to heal, and it can. It just takes a lot of time. But what does brain healing mean? It means all those synapses have to come back together.
A lot of sleep.
Yeah, sleep, and that is one of the main things that a brain needs to heal and grow. And that's why kids sleep so much. And that's why the elderly sleep so much, because their brain is growing. So yes, people want, after a person has a stroke, there's this, they're not going to reclaim their function and they're never going to get certain things back. They will if you let them rest and then do the work. Like you said,
you got to put the work in.
But I think there's incremental steps, and people have to understand the fundamentals of how growth, healing, and development come together, so you don't put the cart before the horse. All right, so we are continuing to talk about steps through recovery, and then what keeps us from moving forward, what keeps us stuck, and what is that process of recovery supposed to teach us, or what can we learn from that? So maybe go into
Let me think about that.
Because you mentioned at one point, and I can't recall if it was during our conversation or just a conversation that we've had, because we've had many about your recovery, and that's why I wanted you to share on camera, because I think people can relate to trying to grow through something. Notice I say grow through something.
You know what I really think holds, this just popped in my head, what holds people back the most is just they don't want to be uncomfortable.
Yes. Yes, we've talked about that a lot.
Isn't that right? If we just talking on basic level of what holds, right? What does that mean? That could be fear of failure. That could just it being hard.
Effort. Needing to put
man,
forth
I don't mean to laugh, but I'm
and
like
attention. Yeah.
But it's a lot of things, right? So damn, it's gonna go deep. So
Go for it.
I think, and again, I may or may not be. I think I'm right, but I think a lot of problems with society now is an inability to focus. Right? So where does that come from? I think a lot of it is technology, smartphones, because when we were growing up, did we have to be taught how to focus? Was there a class that we ever took to focus?
No. But there were things I think that were able to captivate us and hold our attention.
Okay.
But the things that captivated us and held our attention typically led to an activity.
So what has happened now? There's too much.
Like you said, things are digitized, and so because of that, yes, there's, even when people leave comments, we call that engagement, and we all know that that's not engagement. Engagement is what you and I are doing right now.
Yeah.
Or when you're on a tennis court, you are physically engaged in something, and so there's a pursuit of trying to find your flow, and so you're never going to find your flow watching a movie. You're never going to find your flow when you're not active, when you're not moving, when there's not a practice. And so you talk about recovery and how you get stuck and what you do when the motivation fleets, because motivation is fleeting.
All right, so let's talk about that.
It's the practice.
So Tracy doesn't like the word discipline.
Yeah, I don't.
And so we've had this discussion before, the difference between discipline and practice.
Yes.
And she opened my eyes because discipline is meant to reprimand somebody.
Well, not always, but
but there's that connotation,
there is
right?
a
You're doing
connotation,
something wrong, right? So I like practice better. I'm not gonna lie, I do like that better because it's doing is practicing, right? You're trying to get better. It doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
You're trying to get better.
Right.
And again, for me, I'm gonna try to get better every day, and it can be anything or everything. So if we're talking about like happiness and our lives, right? I look at it like a wheel, right? And so if you want to be happy, you got to work on everything.
Okay, so you say a wheel, but it's like spokes on the wheel.
Spokes, yes. Okay. And that's, so you got your sleep, you got your relationship with your friends, you got your health, you got your sleep, the important stuff.
It's very Vedic. You're talking about
exercise,
like Hindu and Buddhism.
But right?
Okay.
So we talk about practice. So I'm practicing working on all of those all the time. But what most of us will focus on like one, but then it's like you're lacking somewhere else.
And there's no balance. And because you're practicing and focusing your attention in one area, there's obviously going to be a marked deficiency in another area.
All the time.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting that he brings up the correlation to practice because, again, we play tennis. He's a pro and I am what I am.
We're all playing tennis. We're not getting paid.
But the point is, you have to put the time in. You have to execute. You have to put in the reps.
There has to be. Yep.
To, and you can have a baseline, whatever your baseline level of gift or talent is one thing. But that has nothing really to do with your willingness to show up and put in the work. Because you can be exquisitely talented and fall flat because you're not willing to show up for yourself and put in the reps and learn the fundamentals and learn the tools and the skills and how to apply those tools and when to apply those tools. There's another video on when, check that one out. So that your whole game can come together in a holistic way. And so you can execute well on the court. So there's a lot more involved than just talent. And so when it comes to his recovery, the practice that it took and the incremental steps and tools that you utilized to reclaim, your health, your mobility, your cognition, all of that. Like it's astonishing.
So we talk about tennis.
Yeah.
Tennis is a game, yes, but you can learn a lot about life.
It parallels
right?
life so
the game
much.
of life.
That's why I love
tennis.
it. Yeah.
And so, I got knocked down. I was able to get up, right? But I was able to get up because I know what it's like to be uncomfortable and for it to suck, right? And where did I learn that? Tennis, right? Because I tell my students this all the time: embrace the suck, because you're gonna be uncomfortable. You're gonna be uncomfortable, and you can find that anywhere.
You're not gonna be good at it, and
right.
you're gonna be bad at certain things. And
but you gotta work, right? So, trust me, that drive from within, that has to come from within,
it
right?
Does.
Because I can't lead you, I can't make you drink the water. Somebody lead you, right? It's there. But you could learn it in so many ways. Any sport is great, right? Somebody's told me before, if you don't play a sport, you should play an instrument. This is for children. I don't have kids, but I've heard.
Now, that's where you
gotta learn to practice.
That's where discipline to me
You gotta
comes
learn
in.
to practice.
The willingness to show up and do something when it's hard.
Even when you don't want to.
When you don't want to.
Even when you don't.
And someone I had a conversation with friends recently, because I don't think I'm a very disciplined person, and this person, that's why I'm like, disciplined. But this person helped me see, no, you're absolutely disciplined, because you don't get degrees in higher education.
No, ma'am.
And you don't get degrees in higher education from one of the top universities without having some measure of discipline. And I said,
you need to have your plaque behind you all
the
the time.
and I said, okay, because I don't know. Thank you. I don't apply that to me, because I don't think it applies. But they said, no. They helped me see things from a different perspective. They said, no. The willingness to withhold and to make yourself uncomfortable.
Delayed gratification.
And to delay the gratification, but also tell yourself no to something that you'd rather do, knowing that there's something that you have to do. That is discipline. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm a little bit disciplined.
Well, again, that's the whole, with life being easier and the digital age of 5G, 6G, we want now.
Instant gratification.
Right. Instead of like, all right, let me put in the work now, I'm going to see the results later.
Yes. Okay.
We've really lost, that's part of it too. That's all part of the recovery. That's all like related to the thing, right? It's like, are you willing to put now for something that you're going to enjoy later on? You don't have to see the result right now.
And so when I work with clients, recovery is applicable with a lot of people, because even if, because even if it's not, a clinical diagnosis, even if it's not a disorder, even if it's not an addiction, even if it's not an injury, we have all been through something in this thing called life. And if you keep waking up every day and keep having birthdays, you're always going to have something happen to you, bad or good. And I don't like bad or good, because things are what they are. They happen. So us placing a value on whether it was a good thing or a bad thing is one way of framing our experiences, but it also can keep us stuck in certain perspectives. So to recover from our experiences, to recover from those traumas, you need tools. Sometimes you need support. He needed a lot of support. He needed a lot of help. And he also learned incrementally exercises, perspectives to add to his toolkit to help him flex and exercise those muscles so that he could heal. And so when he didn't have people standing up beside him, he could still take from that experience and pull from his toolkit and say, you know what, I'm equipped for this because I've been through something before and I've overcome that. And if I've done it once, I can do it again. So let's talk about.
We're going to segue into Will Smith. Well, before we get there, before we get to Will Smith, I love what you just said. Our boy David Goggins. We're going to talk about him in a minute.
Yeah.
And so I love David Goggins. Actually, I read his book before my accident, and my brother. I love telling people about when I meet interesting people, right? So this guy, David Goggins, if you haven't heard about him, check him out. Shout out David Goggins. I want to meet him one of these days. I swear.
We'll put info about him in the description so you can find him.
But we talk about your experiences in life. When you go through hard things, it's like scars. I call them like cookies that we earn. Okay. Right? When you go through something hard, you earn this cookie, you put it in a cookie jar. When you go through hard stuff, whatever it is, you take a bite of your cookie, the cookie that you got in a cookie jar. It's like, I've been through this before.
Yes, I know what this tastes like.
This is nothing. I got this, right? And then all right, so let's talk about Will Smith.
So, recovery and tools, and when we go through hard things and kind of feeling like we can't overcome, or we're stuck, or we don't know what to do with these traumatic things that have happened to us, and we have these hot buttons and these triggers, and we don't know what they are, and we don't know why they are, and why we behave certain ways. So we all kind of collectively experienced a recent shocking circumstance. I would say shocking to most people, probably not to some people. Okay, so there it is. I love that perspective. Kind of, let's say this, uncharacteristic behavior from a celebrity that we all feel like we know and the majority of us love because he's a likable character. But Will Smith and this year's Academy Awards and yeah, so let's chop it up about this.
Oh man, where do we go? All right,
Yeah,
so
talk about hot buttons.
So we talk about recovery.
Yes.
He's got some work to do.
Yeah.
For sure, right? So
Clearly,
we
right?
said that life is always happening, right? So things happen. So me and Tracy talked about this before we our chat today, and life always happens, right? It's always happening. So what is character? It's like, how do you deal with what happened to you? Right? So obviously that his reaction, that didn't come out of anywhere.
Correct.
Out of nowhere, I mean, I'm sorry, right? There was a build up, there was something.
Yeah. Well, see, you and I think that. You know, there may be
Think that?
people, there may be people who don't have that perspective.
Oh, of course
You know,
not.
I
Yeah.
think that, you know, if
True.
you have some emotional IQ, then you understand that Chris Rock's comment about wifey,
Okay. Out of
in
bounds?
theory,
Out of
well,
bounds?
no, I'm not gonna judge it.
Right,
I'm
there's
not
no
gonna
judgment
judge
here,
it.
no judgment.
But what I'm saying is, probably would not have been enough to trigger the scale of the response.
It doesn't warrant the
Right.
retaliation.
They're out of proportion. So, you know,
There's more to it.
what I think I know to be true and what I've studied, there's something else going on underneath that. So he had some sort of a hot button that either he was aware of or not aware of, or a trigger, as we're calling them these days. And we'll talk about triggers, you know, either more during this conversation or another episode. Because I have some.
I gotta be careful what I say, man.
Yeah,
because,
I have
like,
some. Well,
when
we need to share.
Well, let's be honest.
So
Let's
I
be
think
real.
we believe there had to be something else going on. Perhaps the pressure of the evening, perhaps some dynamics between he and his wife, perhaps some dynamics between he and Chris Rock. Who knows?
I think there's a lesson to be learned though for all of us, right?
Yes.
Is okay, they're entertainers. Yeah. So people out here talking like, oh, you know, we all look up to this guy and this and that. Like, why are we looking up to him?
Yeah.
Just because he's on TV?
Yeah.
Like, what about the teachers or the principals or the people that like really matter and that should be helping shape us?
Yeah. So
right? Our
there-
kids.
so there
like, why
is
do we
this
care?
Superficial, false, exalting
Yeah. Look,
of these
listen,
celebrities.
right after that happened,
Yeah.
5 minutes later,
Yeah.
right? He wins the award. They give him a standing ovation.
Yeah.
What?
Right,
What?
right,
How did he
right.
not get? You know what I mean?
Because
stop.
what we
Stop.
witnessed was an
Right.
assault.
All right.
It
So
was clearly an assault.
I'm gonna go deeper. Right.
Yeah.
We'll go deeper. Harvey Weinstein. Yeah. Right.
Okay.
He's won Oscars,
Hot
whatnot.
button. Yeah.
Right. And so they're saying like, oh, maybe there's gonna be action. Take his damn Oscar away.
Yeah.
They didn't even do that to Weinstein.
Yeah.
So nothing is. This is the sad thing. Nothing's gonna happen to Will Smith because you're not gonna bankrupt the guy. He's rich beyond.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he's not. The problem is he's just being enabled. So to me, the real lesson is like, why am I even like, you know what? That's just pushing me further away from Hollywood and the whole because the fact that they're all sitting in the room and they're sitting there, standing ovation, huh? What?
So let's go deeper into the psychology of it and perhaps the mass psychosis of it. Because,
Oh, man.
again,
Listen.
we all have been conditioned to sort of perceive that people's worth and value based on what
Fame, money.
criteria, right? And so
winning
we
the wrong race.
we
Oh,
most
man.
certainly witnessed an assault, without a doubt.
Hell yeah,
That
man.
was assault. So Chris Rock offended. Jada's feelings were hurt.
Yep. Will was
And
laughing
then
in the
Will
beginning.
Smith
Will was laughing in the beginning.
went from laughing to
Saw
an
her
assault.
reaction. He saw her reaction.
And for me personally, the physical assault, honestly, was not as jarring as the verbal assault. And clearly that is because of my experience and my stuff, and also because I think the art of film we're so desensitized to physical violence. And because it wasn't repeated, it was just a one-time slap, it was jarring and sort of stunning, but it wasn't as disturbing for me personally as after he sat back down. And in that moment, you would think that he had a moment to reflect.
Quivering.
But the average stress response in the body is 15 minutes. Now, that varies.
15 minutes?
15 minutes.
Dude.
So he wasn't even at the peak of his frustration when he sat down. And so the continued verbal assault was the part that was when I really got to see, wow, he's got something going on right now. Like, he's not even in his body. But I did appreciate, and others disagree with me, that he did receive the award, and him getting on stage minutes after what we all witnessed, and him having an opportunity to speak on his behavior, to me, is part of the arc that we don't get to see a lot.
Recovery?
I don't know if it's recovery, but think about young children who see their parents argue, but they don't get to see their parents reconcile and witness working through the problem. And that's part of where we as human beings get stuck. Am I making a judgment on whether he did what he did was good or bad? No. I'm speaking of each thing incrementally. So to have the opportunity to have executive function, go ahead.
Should he have even received the award though?
I can't make a judgment on that. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. I don't know. To me, that's a moral call. I'm speaking on it from a cognitive place.
But that's where I just have that the taste is so bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When
And
that
I
is
understand
able
that.
to, right? I'm like,
And I do understand that, if that behavior is
because you're
tolerated,
just enabling. You're enabling.
that behavior can end up being taught.
It's enabled,
But
man.
this is what I'm saying, and this is why I think this is what I'm speaking to, the power of him getting up and acknowledging what he did, and the emotional intelligence and executive function and reasoning that it took for him to
Where was it 10
begin
minutes before?
to try to I don't know. He was in his feelings, but he came out of his feelings and went into higher thought and higher reasoning.
I have to go back and see what actually
He was in his basal
I know
brain.
he was talking about, what was he saying?
And then he
was
came to
saying
his
something
frontal
about
lobe.
happiness or something like that, or what was the speech?
He
had some type
he
of-
referenced, and I only watched it one time because I didn't want to glorify it, but he referenced only wanting to protect his family and be about love, but I could tell that there was deep retrospection, like, wow, this really just happened in front of everybody, and I'm also standing up here receiving an award just after I did the most uncharacteristic thing. So to me, I appreciated the opportunity to see the full arc.
Yeah.
And
That's
we
challenging,
don't know,
man. That is pretty
and
good
we
challenge.
don't
Yeah,
know
I'll give him credit
what
for that.
the consequences are going to be. We don't know, it remains to be seen if
Time will
he
tell.
is going to be
Recover.
reprimanded. Is he going to recover? Is his career going to recover?
So
Yeah.
in your mind, what would you call a recovery then for him?
More retrospection, more acknowledgement of the fact that he has hot buttons that maybe he's not aware of. So that self-control and the things that take him out of that space. And if it's triggered by somebody, saying something about his wife or his family.
Crazy though. I don't understand.
These are the things that I find
So-
interesting because to me, he has built his career on being the nice guy.
How
And
do
the guy
you-
that didn't swear.
He's the Fresh Prince, man.
Right.
People used to laugh at him.
Yes.
You can't
And
laugh at
exactly.
yourself.
So you build
Stop.
your career on being nice and being snarky.
It's all a front.
And making jokes.
All a front.
Well, maybe he's just in a different place in life, But the fact that we're talking about this is interesting to me because, to me, instead of cancel culture, I think it's an opportunity for us to have conversation, a meaningful conversation. Not was it right, was it wrong? Let's just talk about what we
happened?
observed.
What happened?
Let's talk about what we observed. How does it, relate to our daily life experiences?
But let's
Because
be-
he's human.
Let's be honest. That could have gone so much worse.
Of course.
Right? That could have been. I'm sorry. You come at me like that, I'm swinging. It could have been, right?
Yeah. And Chris Rock could have really been hurt. I mean, he could
So,
be hurt. We don't know.
Like,
so
kudos to him for like
serious.
holding it together.
I mean, it was
Damn.
a serious situation. I think it still is, and there are a ton of people are talking about it, and of course I'm talking about it as well. But I want to talk about it in a more meaningful, deep
What
way,
can we learn from it?
as opposed to right and wrong.
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean? What does it mean when we go off the rails? What does it mean when we haven't dealt with our stuff? What does it mean when we are unaware and unconscious about the things that are really bothering us and the things that we're really going through, but we refuse to acknowledge? And then someone says something to you that they may think is benign, they don't think is hurtful. They're trying to be a comedian and do their job, which you should understand because you're in entertainment, and somehow those hot buttons, we're so sensitive about our scars that you're talking about because we haven't done our work to heal them. And then it explodes into something else.
Did you hear they talked to his mom? Did you hear what his mom said?
No.
So his mom, they interviewed the mother, and he goes, "That's the first time I've ever seen him go off, ever in his entire life." I'm like, wow, I doubt that.
Yeah, well,
I seriously doubt that.
But who are we? We don't know.
No, we don't know either.
don't know.
Like, there was a guy, it was in the news not too long ago. He was found guilty. It was homicide or something like that. And it was the murder happened like 10 years ago. And then the mother, when he was being sentenced, comes out there and, defends him. She's like, "Oh, it doesn't have a bad bone in his body, this and that, this and that." I'm like, wow, man.
Again,
we're
awareness.
so disconnected.
Yeah.
There's like, where's the...
And we're disconnected from our emotions, and this is how things like this happen. And then it spills out into the world, and now you have consequences because you've, instead of interpersonal relationship, which is what's going on with you, your relationships outside of yourself end up being affected. So I think it's important.
I got another cliche. So, right, we talk about, like, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen, right? So he was just on TV with his wife. Again, I'm not saying right or wrong, right? And they put all their business out there. They're kids. Like, the son wears dresses. I'm not judging, right? But they're out there. They are out there. So, again, there's like...
Exactly. But
so
it makes you tender.
And again, life is always about what happens to us and how do we respond. So, so if we're going to take a lesson from this, when things happen, if you're in your feelings, take a second and pause and think about it before you...
Skill.
Right. But this is where we can learn, right? Pause. Let's think about before you say or do anything. Sometimes the best thing is to do nothing.
We're talking about executive function and, brain function and why we have impulses and what those impulses do to us. And when we are in our limbic brain, which is our reptilian brain, which is deep in the base of the spine, you don't have to think, you react.
That's why I didn't get hit.
It is.
By the way, I got hit up here.
Yeah, well, exactly. So that's why it was important for me to explain to the people, like literally brick by brick by brick, synapse by synapse by synapse, you had to rebuild that. And this executive function comes online when children are young.
Oh, yeah.
And 5, 6 years old. And it takes practice. And this is why children have problems focusing and keeping their attention.
Well, keep the phone out of
But
their
clearly,
hand.
it's not just children. Clearly, it's not just children.
Well, you don't.
So our relationship to cognition and higher reasoning and self-control, which is an executive function, it's higher. It is not just being in your animal brain.
So I got a question for you, Trace. Mm-hmm. So how would you explain all that if you wanted to give action to like a 5-year-old? Minus the big words. You know what do you mean?
What do you
mean? To be to like all of this.
To control
to
themselves?
help that. You know what I mean? Like,
So-
what action items could we?
But it's practices. So
Right.
teaching them, like you said, to sit still and
Focus on one thing.
Like we talked, we're taking it full circle.
Yeah.
It is
for
the
sure.
ability to be captivated by a thing
Tennis ball.
and keep yourself engaged with that thing. And yes, children have the attention. That's why they love digital. That's why these kids are born into.
They're so smart. With
They're
it. It's
captivated.
crazy.
But even when they're watching, they learn to do as well. So if you can give your child screen time that is an exercise,
Oh, man, that's
as
so
opposed to
hard,
just
man.
screen time where they're watching and being entertained.
But they're so smart with
It's
the thing.
different.
They're so smart with it, right?
Yeah.
I heard about a kid
Yeah.
who, when he was 5, he got on YouTube and then he was looking up like Barney or Sesame Street or something, and then he found porn.
Of course.
Right? Because the parents didn't put the lock on it,
Yeah,
and then he was addicted to porn at like 6.
I'm sure there's more than just a kid, because it happens. You have to control those things. But my point is, how do you get a child to engage and hold their attention? I mean, how do you get a child to focus on attention and practice attention? You engage them, and you have to put them in activities that require them to concentrate.
You gotta follow up.
And use their physical body as well.
That
you know?
always helps.
And that's how you build that working memory and self-control.
About the whole importance of exercise and moving. Damn,
yes.
man. Oh,
Yeah.
That's another
So
damn
anyway,
topic.
you know, we wish Chris Rock the best. We wish Will Smith the best,
I wish his
and
family the
Jada.
best, man.
Yeah,
and honestly, everyone that was there, I feel bad for them, because it's like Jim Carrey said it, and he was like the only one who had like, and he's a clown, funny guy, but he was like, I felt sorry for all those people there, because they worked so hard for all of that, and then all the focus is on him now.
Yeah. And so that's what I was gonna say, that, you know, we wish that everybody gets the best out of that situation as possible, and the only reason we're talking about it very formally here is because we wanted to shed, so everybody's talking about it, but what are we saying about it? And so my desire was to bring a little bit more, shed a little bit more light on circumstances, because of course it's all speculation. We don't know any of these people, although we feel like we do, because they've been our lives, but we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But we wish everybody the best, and we hope that you know, that reflection that's necessary for growth and recovery happens for all parties involved. And we're talking about it because we want to use it as an illustration and as an example, geese are landing, of how we all can be more retrospective, be more insightful, be more mindful, and understand that growth and development and healing requires executive function, not just emotional reactions. So we can work on tools, we can work on skills, we can work on strategies to get you from where you are to where you want to go and help you take initiative. Thank you so much for being on the show. Hopefully we get another opportunity to have a conversation. Okay. Thanks, Glommers. Stay tuned. Do you have the courage to show up for your own life? To realize your vision and unlock your potential, contact Glom Initiatives at 757-550-4987 or glominitiatives.com.